What if being everything they needed meant forgetting everything you were? What if the praise, the trust, the admiration, the things they said made you special were never about you, but about how well you disappeared into their needs? You were the quiet storm, the old soul, the one who saw too much too soon. You could read a room without looking up, sense a lie behind a smile, anticipate a silence before it fell. You learned early that your sensitivity wasn't a flaw, it was a tool. A way to navigate uncertainty, to survive chaos, to stay safe. And the world loved you for it, or at least it loved the version of you that kept them comfortable. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But for some of us, that privilege is delayed, postponed, traded away in pieces, for acceptance, for approval, for peace that doesn't disturb the surface. You weren't praised for being you. You were praised for being useful. And so you became fluent in usefulness, fluent in silence, fluent in becoming the person each room required. You made yourself small enough to fit into their narratives. You edited your truth until it was digestible. You sharpened your intuition, not for freedom, but for safety. This isn't a story about burnout. This is a story about identity theft. Not by others, but by slow agreement. You agreed to wear the costume, to play the part. You agreed to mute your complexity so others could hear their own echo in your presence. And you did it so well they mistook your silence for wisdom, your patience for peace, your suppression for strength. But you remember who you were before the applause. You remember the version of you that wasn't yet translated into something polite, the version that laughed too loud, asked too many questions, cried at things no one else noticed, the version that hadn't yet been taught to disappear. That version is still there, under the mask, beneath the performance, behind the carefully filtered sentences and agreeable smiles. You can feel it now, a tension, a restlessness, a pulse. Because there comes a moment, not loud, not catastrophic, when the mask simply stops fitting. When you hear yourself say, "I'm fine," and something inside whispers, "That's a lie." When you look in the mirror and recognize the face, but not the eyes. And it's in that moment that the forgetting ends. Not all at once, but like a name you haven't heard in years, slowly returning. So no, this isn't about reinvention. This isn't about becoming better, stronger, more impressive. This is about return to the unedited version, the one that never needed approval to exist, the one that never asked for permission to be real, because you weren't born a mirror. You were born with a face, and it's time the world saw it again. You see it, don't you? The conversation that didn't mean what it said, the success that feels hollow beneath the surface, the person smiling through pain they haven't admitted yet. You've always seen it. That's the curse. Your intuition isn't just pattern recognition. It's emotional sonar, a radar tuned to the invisible. You sense tension no one names. You decode meaning from silences. You hear what people aren't saying, louder than what they are. It's a beautiful thing. Until it isn't. Because when you see too clearly, the world stops feeling safe. You notice when people perform happiness. You feel the moment a friendship begins to drift. Weeks before it ends, you know when someone needs help before they do. And still, you wait. Because you've also learned that seeing too much makes people uncomfortable. So you shrink your vision, you bite your tongue, you say, "I'm probably overthinking it," when you're actually right. Carl Jung said that intuitive types don't just perceive the present, they see potential futures, abstract patterns, hidden meanings. That's not a metaphor for INFJs. That's a daily experience. But you've also learned something darker. Most people don't want the truth. They want comfort, familiarity, noise that sounds like music. And your depth doesn't comfort them. It disrupts them. So you become the silent observer, the one who knows but doesn't speak. You smile at the irony of being admired for wisdom while being excluded from simplicity. You wonder what it would be like to be normal, to feel the surface without falling into the depths. But you can't unsee. You're the one who knows the joke is a defense mechanism, the compliment is a cry for connection, the bragging is a mask for shame. And so you carry it, all of it. Invisible weight in your nervous system. They call you sensitive. What they mean is accurate. They say you overanalyze. What they mean is you understand. But the worst part isn't being misunderstood. It's being expected to pretend you don't see what you see. And that pretense, that's where the pain grows. You learn to live with the ache of inauthentic spaces, the boredom of surface talk, the exhaustion of reading everyone's emotional code while feeling like no one even reads yours. You begin to question, is it me? Am I broken? Too much? But the deeper truth is this: you're not too much. You're just tuned to a different frequency, one that hears truth beneath noise, one that notices misalignment before it becomes a crisis, one that makes you powerful, but also painfully alone. So what do you do with that? You stop apologizing. You stop diluting. You stop pretending your perception is a liability, because your intuition was never the problem. The problem was being told to ignore it. You don't owe the world palatability. You owe yourself alignment. And if that means standing alone in your knowing, so be it. Because clarity, even in solitude, is better than comfort built on illusion. There comes a moment, sometimes quiet, sometimes violent, when you realize the life you've been living, the version of yourself you've been embodying, doesn't belong to you anymore. You've spent so much of your time trying to be the person everyone needs you to be. The friend, the partner, the confidant, the teacher. You've molded yourself into something that fits. You've sacrificed pieces of yourself, contorted your truth into shapes others could digest, always quieting the parts of you that didn't align with their expectations. You became skilled at pretending. You learned how to fit in, how to blend, how to be the one everyone can rely on without ever asking for anything in return. You wore your mask so well that you forgot what it felt like to breathe without it. But here's the truth: masks suffocate. At first it was easy. The world rewarded you for being exactly what they wanted. Calm, composed, always there, always understanding. You were the one who could listen without judgment, who could give without taking, who could shoulder the weight of others' emotions without ever revealing how heavy it was. You convinced yourself that this was love, that being needed was your purpose. But slowly, without warning, something shifts. The weight starts to feel unbearable. You're still giving, still offering yourself up, but the well is running dry. You're running on empty, and no one notices. You give more than you have, and somehow the world never gives back what you truly need. Your body aches, your heart feels distant, and you begin to wonder, is this all I am? You've spent years learning to please others, to make everyone else feel comfortable, and in doing so, you've abandoned the person you once were. You've lost touch with your own needs, your own desires. The role you've played is so ingrained in your bones that you've started to believe it's who you are. But it's not. It's a program, a set of instructions you were handed, a script you followed without ever questioning it. And now, for the first time, you're beginning to ask, what if this wasn't meant for me? What if the person I've become isn't even the person I was meant to be? Unlearning the program is not easy. It's not smooth. It's messy, uncomfortable, and it feels like breaking. Like you're tearing off pieces of yourself you've clung to for so long. But what you're really doing is returning to who you are, without the filters, without the facades, without the roles. It's the process of remembering what it was like to live for yourself, not for the approval of others, not for the comfort of those around you, but for your own peace. You realize you were never broken. You were just misled. You were never meant to shrink yourself to fit. You were meant to stand tall, to take up space, to speak your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. You've been conditioned to believe that love requires sacrifice, that being needed means being worthwhile, that your value comes from how much you give. But now you're beginning to see that true love doesn't ask you to disappear. It asks you to show up as your full self, unedited and unapologetic. The moment you start unlearning is the moment you begin to breathe again. The moment you reclaim your truth is the moment you begin to feel alive. You are not too much. You were simply trained to believe you weren't enough, but you've always been enough. And now, for the first time, you realize it's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you've always been. There's a strange silence that comes after the storm. The moment when the chaos inside you settles and you realize something monumental has changed. It doesn't feel dramatic, but it feels real. For so long you've been living for everyone else, pleasing, giving, being the one people rely on. You've silenced your own needs, your own desires, in exchange for peace, for belonging, for approval. You've been playing a role for so long you forgot what it felt like to simply be. But now, something inside you is waking up, and you know that this moment, this shift, isn't just a passing feeling, it's a return to yourself. You begin to see the truth, not through someone else's eyes, but through your own. You start to realize that the person you've been living for isn't the person you were meant to be. You've been playing small, shrinking your light to fit into a world that never truly saw you. And now, for the first time, you're stepping into your own power. This isn't a loud proclamation, it's not a revolution, it's a quiet, peaceful realization that you don't need to keep pretending anymore. You don't need to be the one who always sacrifices, always gives, always takes the burden. You've learned that true freedom is not about pleasing everyone around you, it's about pleasing yourself. It's about being true to who you are, even if it makes others uncomfortable. The lion inside you no longer crouches in fear. It stands tall, proud, and unapologetic. The roar isn't one of aggression, it's one of truth. It's the sound of finally being free. Free from the weight of expectations, free from the prison of perfection, free from the belief that you have to shrink to fit into the world's idea of who you should be. And you realize this freedom doesn't require validation, it doesn't require approval, it only requires you to show up, to be seen. You remember the moments when you held back, when you chose silence over truth, when you made yourself smaller so others wouldn't feel threatened. But now you know the truth. You know that you were never meant to be small, you were meant to take up space. You were meant to be heard, you were meant to be you, unapologetically, fully and completely. Osho once said, "The moment you are unafraid of the crowd, you are no longer a sheep, you become a lion, and a great roar arises in your heart, the roar of freedom." This is that moment, the moment when you stop running from yourself and start running toward your truth. And yes, there will be people who don't understand. There will be those who call you difficult, who will say you've changed, who will wish you would go back to the person you were. But you know something now, their discomfort is their own. It's not yours to carry. You are no longer the supporting character in someone else's story. You are the protagonist in your own, and this story is one of truth, of strength, of freedom. You are seen, you are whole, you are free. This is the beginning of your return to yourself. And now you can't help but wonder, what will you do next? What piece of yourself will you reclaim today? Leave a comment below, share this story, and let's walk this journey together. You're not alone anymore, you never were.